Hello, this is a review of this Panasonic's AG UX90 camcorder. It's a 4K capable, as you can see, handheld, run and gun, ENG, news, events style, fairly traditional camcorder, but it's their latest release, and as I say, it is capable of 4K shooting as well as HD. So I've had it for a couple of days now. It's been on loan from Panasonic. They haven't told me what to say. This is not endorsed by Panasonic or paid for by Panasonic. They simply said, yes, you can have one on test and do a review on it. So these are my own thoughts on it after, as I say, just a couple of days of testing. But it was enough to go out and do some filming and get a real feel for how the camcorder is in use. The quick conclusion I'll tell you from the outset is I like the camcorder, but there are some caveats which I will come to. So let's have a look round it, I think, to start with. And firstly, at the front here, you've got this lens hood with the nice integrated lens cap. There's no reaching in and taking off a physical lens cap, which you can promptly lose. It is all just built in, a bit like the way that Sony do. And I like that from the outset. Behind that, this is a fixed lens camcorder, as most of this kind of unit tend to be. And you've got the three controls. You're not directly operating the elements of the lens here. It's all servo driven, but it works pretty well. There is a slight lag, particularly noticeable on the zoom ring in the middle, less so on the focus, but you know, there's a tiny lag on them, but it's not horrendous. Particularly so, I like this focus ring. As you can see, it's quite wide. It's got this textured, slightly rubberized coating on it that gives it a really good grip, good confident feel, and it spins really easily, and it is configurable in the menus of the camcorder to either be a coarse adjuster, you can have a very fine adjustment, or even have it adjust to how fast you turn it. So turn it quickly, it'll do a big focus adjustment, and then just tweak it very slowly, and it'll give you that fine control you need when you're shooting 4K. I had no trouble at all focusing with this camcorder. Even without using focus assist, I found it very acceptable. And that's one of my main criteria for a camcorder like this is, can I just pick it up and use it without any drama, without any fuss? And with this one, I'm pleased to say, yes, I could, particularly in the case of focus, which on some other camcorders I've tried, you're looking at it and peering at it and thinking, I have no idea whether this is actually sharp or not, but this was fine. Zooming, as I say, a little bit of lag on that, but I'm not too worried because I tend to use the zoom rocker anyway. Iris ring, fine, and you can configure in the menus whether you want it to be open that way or closed that way. In fact, I'll mention that now. This camcorder is mightily configurable. Practically everything can be changed in the menus, from what all the buttons do, and I'll come on to the buttons in a second, but you can configure all those buttons in the menus. You can change the look of the picture, you know, the master pedestal, the gamma type, the color shift. There's just a million different parameters you can alter in there. And you can define what information you want shown on the screen. Lots and lots. I don't think you're going to be short of configurable options for setting up the camcorder how you would like it, and again, that is very pleasing. Here we've got 3 levels of ND plus off, so you've got quarter 16th, 64th, you've got push iris, you've got push auto focus, manual focus of course, you've got a button here, by default that's your white balance, again all reconfigurable. User buttons here, I don't know why they mark them as user buttons, because as I say, pretty much every button here can be changed to something else. You've got your gain and your white balance, your shutter. Little switch here for switching between auto and manual, so if you do need to just very quickly run and gun something, flick that, bang, it's in auto. But I mentioned the configurability. What I do like about this is, in the menus, you can set what aspects of the camcorder are handled by the auto. So you can turn stuff off. Let's say, for example, that like me, you like a set shutter speed. You don't really want the camcorder messing about with shutter. That's fine. You can set in the menu, when you go into auto, make the shutter manual changeable. So when you go into auto, it will initially put everything into auto, but if you press the shutter button, you've still got the manual control. Everything else, focus, exposure, it'll all be in auto, white balance, but you can still set the shutter manually. Or if you want the focus, or anything, it's brilliant. You can just say, I don't want that bit to be under auto control, even when I've put the thing into auto. Or you can just have the whole lot being auto. So that's a really nice touch. This records to SDXC cards. If you want to be shooting in the top bit rates, which is 100 megabits a second on this one, then you will need a fast card. I think it's UHS3 class 10 cards. It's best to use those anyway. Obviously high capacity, because if you're shooting 100 megabits a second, you're going to get through some card pretty quickly. You've got dual slots, and you can, record to both or swap from one to the other, usual kind of thing. Behind that, audio controls with a little flip cover over it. So you've got line input or mic and phantom powering. You can switch whether that input goes to channel 1 or channel 2, and everything is very flexible again. And it's even got a little internal mic on the front here. So if you're just literally running and gunning, switch it to record from that, and it will do an okay job. I tell you what I would like manufacturers to include, and I don't think any of them do, little furry wind jammer over their included mics, because you'll never be able to find a standard Rycote or whatever windjammer that will fit that shape. They're always designed for shotguns, aren't they? So where manufacturers include an internal mic, yes, they put a primitive pop shield over it, but I would like them to have made for it and included with it a windjammer for the little internal mic. And that way you really could use that as your natural sound mic, and then only ever need to plug another mic in when you want to do an interview. Anyway, minor gripe. With the door shut, you can still access the two little volume controls, but they are flush with it, so you can do that all you like. You're not going to accidentally change the audio levels. We've got an OIS, which by default is on this button here, Optical Image Stabilization. If you're in 4K mode, you purely have this OIS system. If you're in HD mode, you get this thing called hybrid stabilization, where it uses an electronic stabilizer as well. It's okay. I think I've been spoiled by having Sony's little camcorder with the balanced optical stabilization in it, where the entire lens and sensor assembly is gimbaled, because that's out of this world. It would be impractical, I believe, to fit such a system to a camcorder of this size, but the trouble I have is now whenever I use one of these, I'm aware that the stabilization is not as good as my little consumer level Sony. So it's okay. If you're running and gunning and hand holding the thing, it will do a decent job of ironing out the little wobbles that you'd really notice, but you're not going to think, oh, I've got a glide cam. It's okay for its purpose. What else here? Oh yeah, this is worth mentioning. This button here by default toggles the viewfinder on, because you can't have the screen and the viewfinder on simultaneously. By default, when you pull the screen out, you see the screen, and then suddenly you think, oh, I just need to check something in the viewfinder because, I don't know, the sun's come out and you can't quite see the screen. Oh, there's nothing there until you press the button, at which point the screen goes off and the viewfinder comes on. Now, it's a trivial thing, but that can be slightly annoying. Sometimes in live event filming, you just want to very quickly stick your eye up to here and then go back to using the screen again. And to have to toggle it is irritating. It would be much nicer if the camcorder could drive both simultaneously. I know that would result in a slight power hit, but that wouldn't be an issue on this camcorder, because let me mention the battery while we're at it. It's in the back as usual, and if you press the button on it, it gives you little 4 LEDs lighting up, tell you how much power you've got. This thing on this camcorder is rated at 7 hours of record time off the standard included battery. That's phenomenal, and I'm inclined to believe it. I didn't actually run it for 7 hours, but in all the filming I did, it barely seemed to draw any power at all. So truly, this could be the first run and gun camcorder that you don't need to pack a spare battery with. I probably would, but it was pretty impressive. So I don't think it would be a huge power issue to have the LCD and the viewfinder on at the same time. Perhaps there's some other reason why they don't do it. I don't know. I just know that it's annoying not to be able to have both on at the same time. I mentioned the screen. It pulls out here, flips round like that. It's okay. It's nice and big. You can't really see it in daylight. Even when you power boost it up and turn the brightness up and the contrast up, you're kind of shading it with your hand, and it needs a screen on it. And of course, as soon as you put a screen on it, you can't really then fold it and put it away again. So it's a nice enough image, I suppose, indoors, but it's not going to be great outdoors, at which point you are going to be using the viewfinder. The viewfinder, I always have trouble with viewfinders because I've got terrible eyesight. It's corrected with the glasses, but it's still pretty shocking. Yes, you can stick your head up here. I still ended up slightly trying to mask off light coming in. So this is a decent eye cut, but not the best. If it was a little bigger, I know it would be sort of odd looking to have it any bigger, but if it was, you wouldn't need to put your hand up to cover it. And also I found that even after adjusting the diopter, I sort of had to move my head around to see the different bits of the screen in focus. If I stared straight ahead, that was in focus, but if I just glanced up to the top left or right, that was slightly fuzzy. Whereas if I moved my head, it was almost as if whatever I was directly looking at would be in focus. And no amount of diopter adjustment seemed to compensate for this. So it's okay, you can see stuff in it, but it's not brilliant. And I put that probably down to my eyes and wearing these glasses. For most people, I would imagine it's probably going to be fine. Where was I going with that? Yes, the screen. So yes, you can point it forwards and you can tilt it down and you can look at it upwards. Slightly oddly, when you initially turn it like that and try and do a selfie piece to camera, as many journalists will do these days, when you've got this in mirror mode, it turns off all the screen icons. Don't know why. It means you can't see any of the settings. If you leave it not in mirror mode, then it leaves the settings on. Bit peculiar, but at least you can see the settings if you need them. The only downside of this is that sometimes you'll be filming standing alongside the camcorder and you're a bit too close to the screen to see it. And on other camcorders, you can fold the screen back against the side of the unit so you can see it properly from this side. You can't do that on this. You have to be looking at it like that. And the other thing on this, as with many other camcorders, that drives me mad as a solo shooter is that quite often you need to be interviewing someone from this side because you want their eye line looking this way. And to get that, you need them looking at you, really. Otherwise, they look all over the place. So you stand here. Oh, look, I can't see the screen anymore. You can't even, as on the Sonys, which suffer this problem as well, they at least can tilt the screen up so it's sort of sideways onto you and you can crane your neck up to have a look. But on this one, you can't. The only camcorder that has ever addressed this problem, as far as I know, was the Canon XF300, which had a screen that could actually slide out to this side and you could view it. And that was just terrific. More camera manufacturers need to acknowledge that sometimes you'll shoot from this side to do an interview and you want to see the screen. So it is a touch screen, which is quite handy for getting to stuff quickly. But if you don't want to stick your smudgy fingers all over it, there's a little scroll wheel just here and you can scroll and press and scroll and press. A little bit fiddly, but it's doable, and it does mean, as I say, you don't get your mucky fingerprints all over the screen. Okay, I think we've done that side of the camcorder. Oh no, I tell you what, there's something very important I missed. Talking about the lens, which is f2.8 to f4.5 as you zoom in. The big problem with it is that you can see the proud boast here printed on. It's 15 times optical zoom. That's fine. That's enough for most purposes. 24.5 millimeters wide end. Hey, you think, that's quite wide for this kind of camcorder. Normally they're up at the 28, 29, even 30 millimeter sort of number. 24.5, that's quite wide. Yeah, it is, while you're in HD. As soon as you switch this to its 4K mode, it goes to 35 millimeters at the wide end, which isn't wide, not wide at all. And there's nothing you can do about it. You just pop it into 4K and boom, the image crops in. So that's quite limiting. Certainly a lot of shooting I've done is in cramped, confined spaces, corporate work, news work, that kind of thing. And a 34, 35 millimeter wide angle is not going to cut it. So if you're going to use this in 4K, you're going to end up wanting to put a wide angle adapter on the front. Now those tend to be heavy and they'll add you extra weight. You don't really want to be doing that. So I mentioned at the start, I like the camcorder with caveats. That's a major caveat in my book. This is a great HD camcorder that can shoot 4K. But when you shoot 4K, boom, you've lost the wide angle. And so if 4K is important to you, this probably isn't the model. I'll come back to that in a minute when I do my final summing up. Finish the quick tour. You've got HDMI out and a USB on the back there. You've got composite video out here and two controls, two inputs for slotting in a LANC controller for your remote zoom. Headphone is here under this one. Now initially I thought this was going to get right in the way because you need space for your thumb here for the record button, but you can push it right back so that you can get your headphone in and it's not in the way of your thumb at all. In fact, it almost guides your thumb down towards the record button, which is quite nice. So there's not a lot else here, just the on-off button here. The hand grip, very comfortable actually, very easy to get your hand in and get it tight enough, and yet it still feels comfortable, but you've definitely got the camcorder in your hand. And also, and I don't know how visible this will be, the shape of this and the contour, again, very comfortable. Sits nicely in your hand. You can see it's at a slight slope, so you're not having to force your hand at an odd angle to hold the camcorder straight. It's not like that, it's like that, which is in the line of your arm and your hand, and you can just slot it in. I don't know if I can show you like that, but there you go. It fits the line of your arm when you're holding it. So yeah, it's good. I've used worse camcorders than that. Obviously the ultimate, again, I have to reference a Canon here, the XF200, and I'm fairly sure one of the Sonys did this. Didn't the EX1 have a rotating hand grip? I think the EX1R had a rotating hand grip, which is great. You can just rotate it all around. I know some people have complained, yeah, but over time they break. But while they're working, it's lovely to be able to rotate it. But this is not bad for a non-rotating hand grip. I'm quite comfortable with that. As is traditional in the Panasonic style, you've got an audio input up here and an audio input down here. Most manufacturers, of course, stick them both here. Panasonic says, well, this will be the one for the top mic and this will be the one for your interview mic. And there is a certain logic to that. There is normally here, screwed in with two little screws, a little mic holder for your top mic. I've taken it off, but it does come with the camcorder. On top here, nice selection of different sized screw threads, so you can bolt accessories on top. You've also got a standard cold shoe there, and underneath, again, you've got the two different tripod sizes. You can put it on all sorts of different tripods. The plastic that Panasonic use on their camcorders I'm not a fan of, because there's something about it. It just looks plasticky, if you know what I mean. I'm quite sure it doesn't break. You don't hear mass tales of people screaming about how their Panasonic camcorder snapped or broke or cracked. But there's something about the look of it. They need to make it look a bit more metallic. I know that's silly, I know it's cosmetic, but you just look at it and think, ooh, that's a bit plasticky. Sorry, Panasonic. I'm sure it's absolutely rugged and reliable. There's something about the look of it I don't like. So that's the main controls, and I think we've pretty much covered everything there. What about the actual picture quality? It's probably worth mentioning that. It's good. I liked it. I found in both HD and in 4K, very sharp. Nice, sharp images. On the 4K, I could easily crop into a 1080 crop. And arguably it wasn't quite as crisp as an HD image, but it's very, very imperceptible, really quite good. I'd have no qualms about cropping an HD out of the 4K. So very pleasing. I've already mentioned very easy to get focus and set the exposure. You've got histogram and things on screen if you want it in zebras, and you've got focus peaking. I will mention actually the expanded focus on this. Very nice expanded focus by and large. You can touch on the screen to see which bit you want to be expanded. You can define how much you want to magnify in. You can have peaking around the focused image or not. Very good and very easy to get focus. But, and this is infuriating, it doesn't operate when you're recording. Now you might think, well, I'll get my focus and press record and all's well. Yes, yes, yes. But sometimes when you're doing a long take of something in a live event situation, just occasionally I like to press the focus assist button and just double check everything is still sharp. You can't do it on this. While it's recording, that focus assist button has no function. And let's say you're trying to do a rack focus in 4K where it's all critical, you get it right. You start out where you want to start out, you start turning the focus, And you want to have that focus assist on so that you can be absolutely sure you've got your endpoint smack on. You can't. You're having to do it with just the normal degree of looking in the viewfinder and no magnification. I find that immensely frustrating. I really wish Panasonic would allow you to have focus assist while recording. Maybe it's a CPU issue or something in the camcorder, I don't know, but it is infuriating. I'd have that down as my second most infuriating thing after the lens jumping to not wide at all when you go into 4K mode. But the image quality, I was very happy with it. I think the pictures were very sharp, very pleasing. In terms of low light ability, I did a handful of low light tests. There is noise in the image. Nobody's going to pretend otherwise. It wasn't horrific. It wasn't the best I've ever seen. I don't think a client is going to notice. And yeah, it's all right. By and large, it's fine. Certainly, I found that in low light situations, this thing held its colours better than, for example, my XF200. I like my Canon XF200. It's got a lot of things going for it, apart from low light ability, where the colour sucks and the image sucks and the noise sucks. That's on the Canon. On this one, reasonable image, but yeah, it held the colour a lot better than my Canon, so that was certainly good. Let me mention the zoom rocker actually, just before I wrap up. Nice zoom rocker. You can set it to 2 speeds, standard or fast. If you want to do fast, it's ideal for when you're trying to crash into things just to get your framing right, again at live event filming. But even while it's on fast, you can just touch it just enough to give you a really slow creeping zoom. I'm not a big fan of really slow creeping zooms, but you can do it with just a touch on the control, even while you've got it set to fast zoom. So it's decent, it's very controllable. The only thing I will say is you can really hear the servo making a noise there. I did an audio test where I plugged a mic in here, pressed the servo, you'll hear it. Now, if there's any other noise going on around you, you won't hear that, I'm sure. It'll be masked by the other noise. But in a quiet room, let's say for some reason you were doing an interview using the top mic. Obviously you wouldn't normally, but let's say you are, and you're in a quiet room and you start reframing in the middle of the interview. You'll hear that servo. So I think it'll rarely be a problem, but like all servos, it's a motor. You are going to hear a bit of motor noise. All in all, I like this camcorder. It was very easy to just pick it up, and I don't just mean physically pick it up, although it is physically easy to just pick it up. It was easy to just get up, put the battery on, and go. And there are some camcorders I've tried that, for one reason or another, they just slightly obstruct you. I liked this. I would have no qualms about buying this, except if I want to shoot anything more than just the occasional thing in 4K, I would find that lens width restriction in 4K too much of a problem. So as an HD camcorder, a modern HD camcorder, great, love it, no problem at all. It's relatively low priced. It is from Panasonic's professional end. So for a pro camcorder at a relatively low professional price, terrific for HD and occasional 4K work. I shall also mention when it's in 4K, it's 25 or 30p. It doesn't do 50, 60. So you're slightly limited on that front as well. So for just the odd bit of 4K. But if you're buying one of these now, you're probably wanting to buy a camcorder that is as future-proofed as possible. So you probably want 4K at 50, 60p, and ideally with a wider angle. Well, there's a solution. The next model up, the AG UX180, has a 24mm wide angle when it shoots full 4K, 4096 pixels across at 24p. It's 25mm in UHD and 25mm in HD. So instantly that limitation is gone. Plus the UX180 has a raft of other features that I won't go into now because this is not a review of the UX180, but it has a raft of other features that make it worth, I think it's about £900 premium over this. This retails at about 2,300, at the time of filming this, and the UX180 is about £3,200. But the UX180 is the camcorder to get, I think. It's effectively the same, but it's got a 20 times optical zoom, it's got the wider 4K, it shoots 50-60p, and there are other enhancements on it as well. So if you need a good HD camcorder now with occasional 4K, this could be for you. If you're looking for the future, see if you can stretch the pennies to the UX180, which is everything this does and a whole lot more besides. And yet there's one final caveat, which is, weirdly, Panasonic's consumer division have brought out a version of the UX180 called the HC-X1, and it is almost identical in every respect. The 20 times optical zoom, the wide angle at 4K, shoots 24p full 4K. Everything's the same, except it doesn't have HD SDI out, which the UX180 has. Probably not a crisis for many people these days. And it is only the HC-X1, only about 300 quid more than this one. So it's a very strange decision of Panasonic to release that under their consumer brand. And Panasonic's Pro brand were saying to me, well, yeah, you can buy that consumer model, but bear in mind you get the Pro warranty and things on this, and much sort of greater support. And for a corporate or news or whatever shooter, those kind of things do matter. But money talks. And as you can get effectively the next model up of this, albeit in the consumer version and without HD SDI, if it were my money, I'd buy the HC-X1. I think this is a good camcorder. I like it. But I'd want the next model up. I can't afford the next model up, so I'd get the next model up as marketed by the consumer division, which is all the same functionality. I hope this was useful. Any questions, do drop me a note below. I'll do my best to answer. As I say, this is going back to Panasonic tomorrow, so I won't have it with me to do any further tests on. Oh, I'm just going to mention very quickly, they do supply you a proper battery charger with it. It's a dual charger as well, which is so nice, because some camcorders you just have to charge the thing on the camcorder. It's rubbish. So a nice dual charger is supplied. Any questions, drop them down below. I will do my best to answer. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.